here we are. I've got my coffee, I got my questions. I reached out to you guys and you delivered. And I have about 8 questions that I had to think about, and I'm ready to answer them for you. A special episode of Finding Fantasy, episode 7, where you give me your questions and I give you my answers. So I think we should just rip right into it. So the first question I got was, Tolkien Reading Day just passed. What was Tolkien's impact on me? It's a good question. His day did pass, I think it was 2 weeks ago or so. He had a profound impact on me, even before I knew that Tolkien had written a lot of the work that I had enjoyed. I didn't realize how big of an impact he actually had on the fantasy genre. He is considered, not just by me, but many other people, as the father of modern fantasy. The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, that's just a tip of the iceberg. He's written so much, and he invented so many different genres of fantasy, if you think about it, that didn't exist before him. So the idea of elves and dwarves together, dragons with high intelligence, all that sort of dark fantasy centered around the old world politics of the Middle Ages. It's all there. So the Game of Thrones fans, the Witcher fans, they all can look to Tolkien. I mean, what would Dungeons and Dragons even be without Tolkien? The guy is a master of world building. He created a world for all of us to enjoy. He even created, an elven language and so on. So he impacted me in a very big way. And the second question then is, what is your process of world building? Which is perfect segue into this new type of skill. It's for writers to create a believable world, they have to immerse you into it. That is the key. If you don't feel like you belong in this world of a book that you're reading, then it's very hard to relate to the circumstances, the issues that are profound for the character might not be profound for you. World building is the crux of all that, and it depends on the book or the short story. So in my case, 2 of my books, The Angels of Resistance and Redeem the Night, they take place in our future, post-apocalyptic future where the world is beginning to recover and nature has essentially taken over, and we're like back to knights in armor all over again with segments and elements of magic. And we have knowledge to a degree of our world today, but it's essentially a little skewed to their time. So they don't have the technology that we had, but they know that we did live this way. So world building for me in those books was really about research and what the world would generally look like and how it would have an impact on the people who would live there, and their experiences of living in this new world, and what the past has taught them, and the different struggles they have to deal with. So my process of world building is more grounded than you think. I don't write a lot of high fantasy stuff. So thinking about it, the only real world building I had to do, I think, was in Paltronus, which was a young adult novella, essentially. And that world building was very walled in, I think. It was really 2 kingdoms, ghostly forest, mountains, volcanic land, and that's it. So it was definitely holed in one area. So I didn't have to go out and introduce all these different peoples and all these different cultures. It was only a few. because the story didn't need to go any further than that. It didn't have to be more complicated than it was. And I think that's the issue. The issue is, how do you make world building believable and engaging without making the reader fall asleep, get bored, and say, my God, why am I reading a textbook now? I'm just going to flip through this. World building has to be very organic for the reader. They believe that they're being pulled into it without even realizing it. It's just a part of the story. And the deeper you get into the story, the more you're being pulled into the world. And it's just essentially a feeling of being a part of the story, having believable characters that are victorious or that fail in this world, and you relate to them. And if you relate to the characters, you can relate to that world. And that's why reading is so exciting. You can use your imagination and be a part of someone else's world. And that's the escape. You don't want to read a book where the world sucks. It's not very exciting. It's not very believable. It's very contradictory in some ways, or it's been done 100 times. So that's my process of world building. Not too out there. I don't create new languages, essentially. I'm not that good. But I like my reader to feel comfortable, and every time they turn the page, they feel like they're home, that they're in this new world with me and my characters. Question number 3. This is interesting. Which fictional character would be the best president of the United States? I know who asked this question. I would have to say Captain America. Captain America, I think, would be the best president of the United States because he's unlike any politician we've seen before. He is the best of us. His ideals, the way he sees not just America, but what America could be, the idea of America from its foundation. He knows the flaws of the country, and he knows how freedom essentially isn't free. This great sacrifice. And I think he would be a great defender of us, of the Constitution, and he'd be tough. He'd be strong, because America needs a president that is a strong symbol, but also as someone who you can essentially trust and believe in and follow. So I think Captain America has all those characteristics. All right, which book of mine is my favorite? Another good question. I've written 6, because some books are combined. So I've written 9 books, but Angels of Resistance, there's 2 parts, there's 2 books in that, and Redeem the Night Trilogy is 3 books. I'm looking at the books right now. I think my favorite is The Angels of Resistance, my first baby. It is just, I can't imagine leaving that book behind, because I almost did about 3 or 4 times. I was in a podcast recently. Everyone you know is from Lyndhurst, or everyone I know is from Lyndhurst. That's the podcast. And I was telling the hosts that, the Angels of Resistance process and me writing that was nightmarish at first. My computer crashed and I lost everything. I was writing it by hand, and coffee spilled all over it, and that ruined a lot. And I published the first editions, and there were a lot of errors, grammatical errors. I was just very wishy-washy about the whole process of writing, being an author. And that book went through the most with me. So we've been through a lot together. It was published in 2005. It's amazing how much I've had to go back in, rewrite it, re-edit it, and now it is the book that started it all. It's got the most awards. It's a dark fantasy epic that anyone can read, anyone can get into. It has a lot of engaging characters that are very complex. It's very high stakes, and that's the book that takes place in our future, a post-apocalyptic world. And when a demonic force uh, invades the world, seemingly from nowhere, the people of our future, don't forget, they're like in armor. They're separated by different cultures, ideals. They have to find a way to come together to not only find out where these creatures have come from, but how to stop them and why they came now. And the book was an absolute blast to write and finish. And as it is in its state right now, it's certainly my favorite book. Okay, how long did it take to develop your card game? My card game, Redeem the Night, not Redeem the Night, oh my god, Redeem the Resistance card game. The reason I say Redeem the Night is because it combines the Angels of Resistance book and Redeem the Night book, and that's the card game. It's essentially you're picking one side, the Angels of Resistance characters or the Redeem the Night characters. And a card game that I created, it's like a deck building card game. Build up your army, your forces. You can upgrade your characters, you get artifacts that they can use to fight. You can fight each other, you fight villains. It's really fun. The game could last 5 minutes, 30 minutes, up to an hour. It depends on how the game goes. But the art for that game, the mechanics to perfect it, it's taken me 12 years to do. It took me a long time. I was very patient with creating Redeem the Resistance card game. I've practiced with other card games, and I try to make it as complex as you make it. So it could be as simple or as complicated as you make it. There's strategy, and there's a luck of the draw. So I'm very proud of that game. It's a blast. Every time I play it with someone, you could just see that they're in it, they're engaged, they're having a great time. And usually you play about 2 or 3 rounds. And I've played with my students in middle school, high school setting. I've played with die-hard card game players. So it's a blast. If you haven't played it before, please check it out. Look at my website, my YouTube. There's plenty of tutorials on how to play, and I'm always posting. But thank you for that question. Yeah, it took me a long time to make it. I'm glad it's finally available. Oh, here we go. Okay. What is your opinion of the new Disney remakes? I know who asked this question, and they just want to see me lose it. Okay. So I love Disney. I mean, look, all right. Even the cup is Disney. Okay. So I've always loved Disney since I was a kid. I've been to Disneyland. I've been to Disney World. I've been to Disney Paris. I love it. It's one of those beautiful things, I think, that kids and adults share. I mean, adults love to go to Disney World with the kids. I'm sure they'd like to go alone, but with the kids too. And they love to watch Disney movies because it's not just for kids, it's for adults too, right? Well, the question, it's a hot topic for me because I think the Disney live action remakes is awful. They were made in a corporate writing room where they were just checking boxes off. There's no heart in these things, man. So I remember when I was a kid, they had the 90s golden age of Disney. So Little Mermaid, they had Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, right? Hercules, Mulan. They had great stuff. And then they said, let's capitalize on these classics. Instead of making new movies, let's just make sequels to them. So then you had Mulan 2, which was terrible. Little Mermaid 2, which was forgettable. And they had a series of Little Mermaid. They had Lion King 2. They might have even had 3. I don't know. I think there was a Hercules series or something. So they tried to capitalize on all that, and it didn't work. obviously. A lot of these movies were straight to DVD or straight to VHS. And that's what's happening now. They're taking classics that are animated um, like gold, really, if you think about it. These movies are timeless. Think about this. As a boy, back in the day, watching He-Man, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, and all that, for a boy like me to watch Little Mermaid and Mulan, Beauty and the Beast, and love it, that says something about the art and timelessness of these animated classics. So now what they're doing is they're remaking them, hoping that they'll get cash from them. There's no art to it, really. There's no heart. That's the problem. They're just soulless remakes. When the Jungle Book remake came out, that was cool, because Jungle Book wasn't a widely watched animated classic, right? It's one of Walt Disney's last films, I think, that he was actually alive for, and when it was being made. So when the live action remake came out, it was stunning to me. It was beautiful. The visuals were great. The story was pretty fun, and the voice acting was great. And the original is still more fun. It's the songs, how playful it is. So then Disney decided, oh wow, that was successful. People like that. Now let's take all the classics and make them live action, without realizing you miss a lot of things when you take, I'm sorry, I'm just getting all hot and bothered. When you take animated and make it live action, you miss a lot. Like, look at the new Little Mermaid, right? You got Flounder that looks literally like a piece of tilapia with eyes. It's nightmare fuel. You've got Sebastian that looks like a ghost crab. It's just, you have Scuttle, which isn't even a seagull anymore, and it's dark. And Ursula in the movie, like the animated movie, that is one of the greatest Disney villains of all time. And McCarthy might be a great actress, but she's no Ursula. Okay, let's just put it that way. And the fact that they have to change what all the characters look like for modern audiences, right? You have to change all the characters. You have to change their race. You have to change their origin story, change their motivations. And then what happens? You get a soulless remake that everyone knows is just made for cash. And some of these just goes directly to Disney Plus, like the new Peter Pan remake. What is that? I mean, that's going right to Disney Plus streaming. It's not even going to be in the movie theaters. So Disney's got to get back to basics, because other studios are doing what Disney used to do, making fun family entertainment that everyone likes, and just put the soul back into it. You know what I mean? Put the heart back into it, and people will come back to it. But they got to do a lot better. The remakes are just soulless and full of, like I said, nightmare-fueled characters. So that's my rant. Are you guys happy now? All right, most difficult part of the writing process. That's a great question. The most difficult part of the writing process for me is the start. How do you start the writing process? You have this idea, but now you have to put it to the page. How do you do that? And I think the most critical is also the most difficult, and that's the outlining process. The most difficult part of writing is before you're writing. You have to outline your ideas. It's just like an essay, which I hate writing, but you have to outline your essay before you start writing, right? That's the only way you're going to have a structured piece of written material. So the same thing goes with your story. You need to outline it. What's the point of the story? What's the conflict? How does it start? Who's your main characters? And you just essentially go down and you just outline ideas of where you want the story to go. And It doesn't have to stay that way. You might change the outline as you go on, um, but you need to get something on paper. People are usually afraid to get anything on paper to start writing it out because they want it to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. Just get it on paper first, and you can edit it later. I think even Stephen King said that. When you get it on paper first, it's never perfect, but get it on paper. And then you go back into it and you read it and you make your adjustments. You have other people read it and they'll make suggestions. So the most difficult part is getting past the hump of insecurity, thinking like you can't do it. And every author goes through this. I was excited to write every single one of my books, but my books, before they're even having a first page completed, I research and I plan things out, right? I take it very slow. I write down things I'd like to have in there. The main crux of what got me excited, I put on paper. Don't be afraid to cross things out. Don't be afraid to change things as you go, right? Your heart might desire something else. You have an aha moment, an entire eureka experience on something else. So the writing process doesn't have to be difficult. It should be fun. So don't, if you're writing something, and I think every writer would agree with me on this, outline it, get your ideas on paper. All right, the grand finale. You stuck with me this far, right? Through my ranting and raving and some of my 2 cents. The last question is, why aren't your books movies yet? I don't know. I do. Well, look, I'm not a famous guy. I write because I love it. I enjoy it. I don't make a lot of money from my books. I've already said this. If I make enough money to put gas in my car, I'm a happy guy. All right? That's about as much as I make. I don't make a lot. It's a labor of love. And it's a legacy that I can leave behind, to my loved ones in the future. And people who've read my work, they'll have something with me, And why aren't they movies? Well, I think I'm afraid of what my movies would look like, in the adaptation from my books, because I'm not going to be the one that's going to direct the movie. I'm not writing the movie. I'm not producing the movie. So, this whole thing about Hollywood taking books and saying, well, we have to fit it to screen and we have to make it so everyone will like it. And they change your story. And you know what? I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into these books. And I don't know if I could handle the movie being totally different from my books, and the characters being totally different, some characters being torn out of the book and new ones being injected in, and their motivations aren't the same. So I am a little hesitant about that, and I wouldn't want to just sell my book to a movie maker to make movie, and I get a whole bunch of money from it, and the movie is lackluster. It's not really good. But this is the whole process of an author. When you write a book, you don't expect it to be a movie. You expect it to be a work of art in the page. I've said this before. I'd rather people use their imagination with my books than see it on screen. But the way I write hoping that there is a movie in your head, that you can see what's happening in my story. You can see their expressions. You can see the action jumping off the page. But it's difficult to get out there. It's difficult to compete with all the other writers out there because I don't see it as competition. I have a lot of writing friends out here on social media, and they know the same thing. You need to lift each other up, and that's what we do. We lift each other up. But now with AI being able to write stories, and there's just so much out there. And how do you get the trust of people to say, yeah, let me pick up this guy's book, let alone let me make a movie of this guy's book? So don't expect my books to be movies anytime soon. I'm sure if it ever does happen, I'll be old and gray, and I'll be walking on the red carpet with a walker. But it's because that way I could be like George Lucas and make the story myself in the future. Who knows what life will be? But technology is always getting better, so it could look cool on screen, that's for sure. But I would want to be a control freak and have control of how the story looks in the movies. But that's just my opinion. All right, we got through it together, guys. Thank you for sticking with me this long. I hope you enjoyed my answers. Some of them were a little more heated than others because I love a good story. I love to feel the story long after I've read it or seen it. And I don't like it when they make stories that are built by corporations that are thinking, how do we make the most money? I know everything is a business, but you know what? I'm a small town guy that, like I said, I love a good story. And I think all of you like a good story too. And that's what I look to do. I venture to write things that can inspire you and that will stay with you for a long time. So I care about the content that I watch and that I read. And you should too. As I say, you should love what you read. And I stand by that comment. So be picky with what you read and what you watch, because your time is valuable and you deserve a good escape using that time. Anyway, I think I've rambled enough. This is why I'm the guy that asks the questions and doesn't answer them in my podcast. Episode 8 is coming up. I have great guests for you in April, so I'll be sure to see you there. And I will be doing this again, probably in episode 14. I'll probably do these questions and answers every 7th episode. Lucky number 7. So again, if you really want to ask me some questions, I promise I will answer them in the most honest way for you. All right? I love you guys. Thank you for supporting me, helping me out to get my work out there so everyone can read them. Keep knocking into this camera.